Greetings and welcome to another edition of the most powerful platform for truth, bar none, anywhere on God's green earth. This is your platform for empowerment, education, and elevation. This is the Red Pill Diaries, and I'm your host, Rashid. I'm your host, your brother, and your friend. So let's jump right into this. The title of the show today is called Down the Rabbit Hole of Western Bizarro Politics. And we're going to get into this a little bit, but I want to first answer a few messages that were sent to me. One message was sent to me as do I ever get mad about other channels not being shadow banned and me being shadow banned and not getting full credit? I don't care about that, honestly. And I know it was coming from a good place when the question was asked to me, but it frustrates me for YouTube to do what they're doing and all of the platforms to do what they're doing. But hey, that's in their power, and let them do what's in their power. The thing that I'm talking about is I can only be concerned about the things that I have control over and the things that I take to God. Otherwise, I have no control over that, so it doesn't frustrate me. Matter of fact, I'm happy for a lot of them that grow because now they're getting financial incentives and they're also becoming well known. So it's a good thing. You cannot be mad at other people's success. When you are mad at other people's success because others are trying to impede your success, you lose focus of your goal, and you put too much power in the hands of others. You understand? So you do what you have to do. This is my thought to me. You do what you have to do to get to where you want to be, and you do it with God first. Okay, all that other stuff is those are sidebars. Also. Someone asked me a question. I'm trying to think of what the question was. I had it right before me, but then I misplaced the paper or whatever as we were going on the air. So until that question comes back to me, we're going to go into the show. All right. Now, I missed talking to you guys because I was on an involuntary vacation from YouTube. Let's put it like that. Let's do it diplomatically and say I was somewhat on an involuntary vacation from YouTube. All right. So, but we're back and we're strong. And I want to address a few things that I could not address on YouTube. I could have done it on Rumble. And I started to do it on Rumble. But I want, when I do these shows like this, I want them on all the platforms. But I will start doing certain shows directly to Rumble and Odyssey and whatever, bypassing YouTube. But listen, we were talking. I know the last few days, you saw in the news that the Israeli prime minister and his war secretary were indicted on war crimes charges, or are about to be indicted on war crime charges. Okay, and with this indictment, there were multiple Hamas elements that were indicted, which is crazy because I'm thinking, why would the that court indict the negotiator for peace from the Hamas side? Why would that even come to mind? Why would you stop and indict the person that is trying to negotiate a settlement? That in my mind, it doesn't play well. It means that what you are trying to do is impede under the cover. This is what the first thing that comes to my mind. Under the cover of trying to mete out justice, you are actually trying to prevent negotiations. Now think about this. What was it? I believe it was last year that a negotiator was killed, right, by Israel, and we have another negotiator that has been indicted. What are the odds of those things, right? All right. So let me get to a few things on this because I want to talk to you all. You know how we do it. We break stuff down. We look into it, and we connect the dots to all of these other events that are going on. So the indictment, according to what I've been able to read, I could be wrong on this, but or the indictment, according to what has been said, has more Hamas people being indicted than Israelis. So the U.S. has been in an uproar about this. Okay. But I want to bring something to your attention. All right. I'm going to pull up something real quick. I'm going to show you how easy this is to pull up. So I'm talking to you guys, and I just pulled up something. And these are my words right here. According to international law, let's see. armed resistance is permitted against an occupying force. I just put that in there, okay? And when I put that in there, multiple definitions came up. So if this is that easy to me, and I'm dumb when it comes to computers, okay? I'm learning to navigate, and I'm learning to do certain things, and I'm proud of myself. But compared to this generation that was born into this stuff, I'm in the Stone Age. So for me to be able to just do that means that someone who is more qualified or more knowledgeable on the computer can do so also, okay? And here it is. We're going to just take parts of a couple of these things, okay? And this is what it says in the first one that's pulled up. Overall, it says AI overview. Yes, international humanitarian law acknowledges and supports armed resistance against an occupying power under certain circumstances. I'll stop right there. I don't want to read the whole thing. I want to go to the next one. What I'm doing, I'm trying to lay out a pattern here to show you that is if you put these words in, you can pull this stuff up. And if you can pull this stuff up and you study it and look at it and read it, then you should be able to understand the ins and outs of what is taking place. Let's go to the next one. The right to resist, depending on how it is defined, can take the form of civil disobedience or armed resistance against a tyrannical government or foreign occupation. Now, there's more on these definitions, but I'm reading what just came. You see me just pull it up, so I'm just reading part of it. Okay. So now we have a brief, a quick understanding of international law, the Geneva Convention, all of this stuff, right? That anyone that is under occupation, the ones who are under occupation has a legal and legitimate right to armed struggle. You understand? I'm going to say that again. Though according to international law, and this could not be lost on the court who issued the indictment or the warrant, the arrest warrant for Hamas's leadership and the negotiator. This could not be lost because I am not well versed on this stuff and I pulled this up. So with all of the information and all of the resources at their disposal, you're telling me that they were not aware of this? You're telling me that they did not understand this? Then why would you have them at the helm of a so-called international court? And why would you have them as prosecutors of court of those courts if they cannot do this simple task here? It shows that they're inept and they are lacking in understanding if they were to issue arrest warrants for those who have been occupied. This is not an occupation of 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. This is more than half a century. And according to international law, and according to, I think it's in the Geneva Conventions also, that armed resistance is an inherent right of those who are being occupied by a hostile regime. What's so hard about that? Huh? I pulled this up in a matter of seconds. I pulled this up in the matter of seconds. Before I go further, I just remembered the question about my voice. A person asked me, and I'm gonna do a sidebar real quick because I have to answer the question. A person asked me, why does my voice get raspy at times? They love the show, but they wonder why my voice breaks up. Well, and they said that they listened to me years ago when I had a radio show, and my voice was strong and powerful. Well, after this so-called pandemic, of that virus that will not be named, when I got it, the after effects was this. I lost the strongness I won't say the thundering voice that I had, but I lost that after recuperating from that thing. Okay, and it became raspy, and a lot of times when I'm talking, I have to keep a bottle of water or something like that because not only do I take certain medicines, but throat starts burning up. So I wanted to answer you. No question is too big or too small to be answered. Okay, so I hope that you're listening today, and I hope that you got your answer. But let's go back to this. Okay, You don't have to be a rocket scientist, a lawyer, a government official, a member of parliament or Congress, or some governor of a state or a province or whatever to pull this up. And if you pull this up and it states openly that it's an inherent right of those who are under occupation to initiate and to keep it going into their free armed resistance. If that is the basis of that law, right, then how in the hell can you indict Hamas when everybody knows that Palestine is under occupation? Huh? This is not no pro-Israeli, anti-Israeli, pro-Hamas, anti-Hamas. We're talking about facts here, okay? Because sometimes we need to go to the definitions to understand. And then when we get an understanding, it also brings into focus the power players behind the scene and what they're trying to do. They'll present it to you in a way that makes you believe that they're really after justice. But how can you be after justice when international law states that any nation or people under occupation has an inherent right to armed resistance? Now, what do they refer to when they talk about Gaza and Palestine? I mean, Gaza and the West Bank. They say occupied territories, right? What do they say when you're talking to Middle Eastern pundits when they refer to Israel, the Zionist entity that occupies Palestine, right? In those statements alone, Hamas is justified in armed resistance, according to international law. So if the prosecutor issues an arrest warrant for those who are under occupation, guess what they're doing? They're nullifying and violating international law, the very laws that they state that they're trying to uphold by issuing warrants. No, it's not so hard. It's right there. And what they're trying to do is appease to the West and appease to the outbreak of anger and hostility against the current world order. So they put up something. I remember what I told you. This is Bizarro World. This is Walt Disney World. They have to put up something as an illusion to lull you in thinking that justice will be meted out. All while the entire plan is something else. The sleight of hand of the magician to redirect your attention on one thing, all while implementing something else. You understand? So the U.S. got so up in arms about it, so enraged about it. This is what Lindsey boy, Lindsey boy had to say. The Lindsey boy had to say about it. Okay, listen closely to this.
So we, hopefully, together will find a way to register our displeasure with the ICC. Because if they'll do this to Israel, we're next. This group tried to come after our soldiers. Yeah, you can clap all you want to. They tried to come after our soldiers in Afghanistan, but reason prevailed. So at the end of the day here, what I hope to happen is that we level sanctions against the ICC for this outrage to not only help our friends in Israel, but protect ourselves over time. Mr. Secretary, your statement yesterday was excellent. The president's statement was excellent. Senator Schumer's statement on the floor was excellent about the outrage here. They have destroyed the notion of complementarity. They have misled people in the United States Senate about their intention, and they shall and will pay a price. Mr. Secretary, I appreciate what you've said. It is now time for us to act.
Oh, man. Listen to what Lindsey Graham said when they issued an arrest warrant for Putin. All right. I will wear the arrest warrant issued by, excuse me, this is the one about Putin, excuse me. So let me scroll down. It says, Where did it just go? Lindsey Graham is happy about the arrest warrant issued on Putin, right? And it's about time. But now listen, he is happy about that, and pats himself on the back for that, right? But when they issued an arrest warrant for the leaders of the occupying regime, which according to the law, it should have been issued not with a mixture of Hamas people, because under that same law, they actually have the right to armed resistance. That means to kill. Oh, listen to me good. Most people don't understand this, and we're not the advocate of violence, war, or any of that. We don't promote that. What we do is break down facts. What we do is break down the issues to give you an insight of this. If international law gives the inherent right to a person or a people or a nation being occupied of armed resistance, they give that inherent right to. What is armed resistance? You don't just get your rifles and just march, do you? What is the meaning of the international community legitimizing armed resistance? Is it meaning to go outside and just brandish a gun? To go make bullets? To get on social media? To say, I have a gun and I have bullets? Or is it legitimizing their right to remove the unnatural occupying regime from their territory by force? Huh? And if it is the latter, how in the hell can you justify issuing an arrest warrant for people who are under occupation? It is in contradiction to the mandate that the so-called international court has, which I don't get down with that. And it is against the international law in the UN. So how can nobody speak on this? I'm pretty sure you have people who've dealt with international law. Why won't they say something about this? They are frightened of the repercussions and the ramifications of opening up this can of worms against Israel and Western politicians and the so-called criminal court, which is crazy. The criminal court is in a place that committed genocide in the 20th century in Africa. Huh? Man, stop this. Stop this foolishness, bro. Stop it. Stop it. So, Graham is happy when Putin gets an arrest warrant. And here's the kicker. For him kidnapping children. And then they realized roughly 150 to 200 children that he was accused of kidnapping wind up in Germany. Why hasn't Schultz been issued an arrest warrant? Because the ICC was so adamant about the security of those lost children that they did not do their due diligence to study and find out where they were and who took them, that they blamed it on Putin and issued an arrest warrant. But 150 to 200 of those children wound up in Germany, which means that they're under the jurisdiction of Schultz, the chancellor of Germany. Why isn't there an arrest warrant? Huh? See, what I'm showing you is the hypocrisy of this is why there's a need for an entire change, a universal change. Universal, not state to state, not nation to nation, not region to region, not hemispheric, but we are in need of a universal change, because every international body of governance, every law has been compromised. Every one of them to suit the West in most cases. That's why the people are so outraged, because they're fed up with this arrogant, imperialistic, racist policy of these organizations that were set up under the auspices of the US and the UK. You understand? I hope you do. So again, I ask that question. And I ask the people that you listen to and look at, why haven't they asked that question? If these children, these 150 to 200 children that justified the ICC in issuing an arrest warrant for the head of state of the, I would say right now, the most powerful military in the world, the president of the Russian Federation, yet you did not, and you have not even uttered a burp or a fart or any noise about those children, 150 to 160 of those children, 150 to 200 of those children being found in Germany. Why hasn't Schultz been issued an arrest warrant? Why hasn't his government been issued warrants? Can anybody tell me? Because of the biasness and that exceptional mind state. I was looking at, as a matter of fact, I was listening to something. It wasn't yesterday. It was day before yesterday when I was on my forced vacation from social media. On my forced vacation from social media, I was watching something, and I forget who it was, but they were talking about how the ICC and these institutions were set up for the prosecution, mostly of, listen to me good, and you tell me this is not racist, mostly of African nations and leaders, and then Latin American, Middle Eastern, and Eastern leaders, without the thought of bringing any U.S., UK, or European leaders into subjugation or subjection to their laws and to their guidelines. I was looking at that and I was like, whoa. I say this all the time. Tell you this. All of these bodies of government internationally, they are inherently racist. Again, go back to the founding of the UN. They did not intend for China in its current form to be a permanent member of the United Nations. You know that? Again, if you listen to this show, you know it. Because Chiang Kai-shek was converted to so-called, and I say so-called because true Christians won't act like this. So when you hear me say Christians, I'm making mark of the ones who claim to be. Okay? So don't take offense to my Christian friends and brothers, because I don't take offense when they're always mocking Islam. Okay? But listen, when it comes to, excuse me, what is this popping up on my screen now? Hold on one second, everybody. I hope they're not ending the stream. Oh, come on, come on.
So we hopefully to get.
I'm sorry, everybody. I had to do that for a second. It said it was ending my stream. So I had to do something to try to offset that. So please forgive me of that. But anyway, let's go back to Chiang Kai-shek. He was a stooge of the West, of Britain and the United States. He ruled China, and he had plans to make China a vassal state to the United States. And this is why, and I'm not an advocate of communism or socialism or any of that stuff, but I only give you historical facts. The facts that they inconveniently leave out when they always talk about facts. So they wanted to use Chiang Kai-shek so that people wouldn't say, hey, this is an all-white, all-Western Security Council. And how in the hell can you justify that when the West, the United States, Canada, New Zealand, so-called Australia, and the European nation only comprise 1/10 of the population of the planet Earth? How can all of the permanent seats be given to them? So what they did, they wanted it to be America, the UK, France, Russia, and China. But they were expecting China to be under the rule of Chiang Kai-shek. But the Mao and his party, Hu and Lao and Deng Xiaoping and all of them weren't going for it. And they kicked Chiang Kai-shek off of mainland China, and he fled under the cover and support of US and UK forces to Taiwan. Right? And only in the 70s, when the United States really needed China's help did they fully recognize China as a full power when they come up with the one China policy. But that's how the China of today, the People's Republic of China, the mainland became a permanent member of the UN Security Council. It was in the writings. They wanted an all white, all Christian permanent council. That's what they wanted, but it didn't work out for them. Go look at the writings. I'm not making this up. Go look at the historical writings on this, and you'll see that Rashid is not making not one of these things up. And so China, just by default, in a way, became a permanent member of the United Nations. All right. And this is why the United States has so much anger and hatred towards China in that way right there. Because in a way, the communists spoiled the plans of the US, UK, Western-centered global architecture. Okay? So now, this is why the entire world is bucking up against the system. How in the world can five nations, and then you have non-permanent members in rotation, overrule the majority of the population of the planet Earth? The way it was set up is might makes right, and economic power supersedes justice. That is how it's set up in the United Nations. And now it's crumbling because the West no longer has this outright dominance in military power, and it has lost its economic sway because of the rise of China. And so recently, in the last 10 or 15 years or 20 years, the United States has been constantly moving outside the realm of the United Nations when they wanted something done because they were being blunted in certain areas. That is the loss of power and the arrogance of these nations to say, you know what, the UN is no longer relevant. It's only relevant when they vote in favor of what I say. It's only right and an international body that is justified when they justify my madness. But if they veto it, if they won't bring it to discussion, if they are in opposition of my desire to wage war against Libya, Syria, Somalia, they wanted to wage war against Ethiopia. They're trying against Yemen. They wanted to wage it against Venezuela. They've done it against Iraq. They're trying to do it against Iran. If you impede my desire for war, you become an irrelevant global institution. And then we'll sidestep it. Then we'll go to the mechanism called NATO. You see? Spoiled children. They see the position that they've had being undercut, undermined, and destroyed. And because they've had such a grip on power internationally for so long, in their eyes, this is totally unacceptable. You understand? So when we look at these situations, we have to look at them through a historical standpoint, a military standpoint, a political, a cultural, and then we have to look at them just through common eyes and common sense, so that we can really see what's going on. Like let's go and talk about something real quick, about what's going on with the recognition of Palestine by 3 nations in Europe, and how the United States and listen to this, why hypocrisy abounds in U.S. Politicians. The U.S. says that they don't agree with unilateral, listen to that, unilateral recognition of a Palestinian state. And yet they agree for unilateral sanctions. And they agree on unilateral actions of war. But by God, if we're going to talk these things out and come up with something that is acceptable, we're not for that. We don't believe in unilateral recognition. Yet you unilaterally recognize Kosovo. You unilaterally recognized all of the former provinces of Yugoslavia. You, Germany, and the rest of them. See, look at this. Just popped up again. Locals. We're having trouble streaming. It just popped up again. I told you. Locals, we're having trouble streaming to your destination. All when I'm talking about this stuff, all of a sudden they're having trouble. They didn't have trouble streaming to the location prior to what I'm saying now. But all of a sudden they have problems streaming to that location. Man, get out of here with that foolishness. Stop it. But look, Mr. Unilateral, when it suits him, it's okay. But when other nations say, hey, we've got to do something. This has been going on for over 50, 60 years. Let's do something that can stop the bloodshed. America, Great Britain, stand up and say, we're not for unilateral recognition of Palestine. Hold up, stop right there, stop right there. You're not for unilateral recognizing Palestine. You unilaterally recognized Israel on Palestinian land when they took it. Man, when the shoe is on the other foot, right? They can't see too well, can it? Huh? I do this for you all to see the hypocrisy in them, to see how none of these governments mean you any good. None of these so-called international organizations mean you any good when they are under the thumb and the boot of the West. International law is fine whenever it suits me, but when it doesn't, I ignore it. The ICC issuing an unjust warrant on Vladimir Putin. That's great. That is going to beat this tyrant Putin down. But when they issue one for Netanyahu, now listen to this good. They issued one for Vladimir Putin for defending the interests and the national security of the Russian Federation against U.S. and NATO policies to undermine Russia's territorial integrity and its sovereignty, and then to put military bases onto the T with nuclear missiles in Ukraine, a former Soviet republic. Vladimir Putin tried to negotiate. The negotiation was not accepted by the West. So he told them, listen, if we don't get down to this, there'll be a technical military response. They ignored him. Then he put in that military technical response or the technical military response, right? And then the ICC or the Criminal Court of Justice or whatever issued a arrest warrant for him. Not for Schultz for having 150 to 200 of those children that they issued the warrant against Putin for, but they issued the warrant against Putin. Now check this out. Ever since this thing has been going on in occupied Palestine, we've been watching it on the internet, on TV, everywhere, right? And it has been in live and living color for you and I. And the U.S. doesn't see any justification for it. There's what Joe Biden said. There's no genocide going on in Gaza. Hold on one second. Let's get to this. All right. We'll go to something. All right. According to the dictionary, the word genocide is a noun. Listen to what it says. This directly corresponds to what the Israeli leadership have been openly stating prior to and during, leading up to this moment right now of this war on Palestine. Listen to this. The meaning of genocide is a noun, and it says to deliberately or the deliberate killing of a large number of people from a particular nation or ethnic group with the aim of destroying that nation or group. Well, we see on Israeli TV that they want, and this is not confined to Netanyahu, the vast majority of the Israeli population wants the expulsion or the total eradication of Palestinians, right? So one qualification is right there. Now, all we have to do is look at the statements made by Netanyahu and his cabinet leading up to this very moment right now. That's two. Now check this out. Over 35,000 people, mostly children and women, have been killed, and they've been finding bodies of people hogtied, shot in the head. Right? And then you have the deliberate bombing of international institutions trying to deliver aid to the suffering Palestinians. If this does not constitute war crimes and genocide, then what does? Oh, I forgot. They don't count that as war crime. Because remember, in the eyes of the West, Hitler is the most brutal person ever lived. He's the most genocidal person ever lived. Even though they have no proof of 6 million. But guess what? King Leopold is looked at with honor and reverence, even though he slaughtered between 10 and 20 million Congolese in the 20th century. Why is there a difference here? Could it be regional? Could it be racial? Huh? I'm pointing these things out. Leopold, yes, Leopold, slaughtered between 10 and 20 million people because he wanted to that day. He felt that he needed to that day. Look at his writings too. A savage, and he's honored. And Hitler is condemned. Man, stop this foolishness. Stop it. Because I'm gonna point out the hypocrisy, and I'm gonna show the entire world this. That's why they continue to block me and suppress the numbers. Because I give two flips about being in the boys' club, rubbing elbows. Because your lives mean too much. You have to empower yourself with knowledge to escape the traps and the snares of this world. If you don't, you become a victim of this world. You become a zombie. All right? That's what you are. You just go to and fro. Whatever the government tells you, whatever social media tells you, you're just like a rudderless ship, to and fro, not able to make move or motion on its own. As a matter of fact, you become a Negro. You know that? So, and I'm going to tell you that since I'm talking about not able to make moves on their own. Check this out. Here's the definition of Negro. This is what I was telling you. Prior to black people coming into slavery in America, that stuff that you hear them talking about Negroes and Negroids, that stuff never existed. Now check this out. After the slaves were brought here in 1555 on April 1st, April Fool's Day. Listen to me good. It was a 64 years removed out of the history books. 64 years. Because that was the dehumanization process. They did not, you can go to the Library of Congress and read it, but you can't read it in school. You can't read it anywhere else. But there was a 64-year history. They call it the dehumanization process. Whoa, that's hard, isn't it? To have 64 years taken out of history because it was so violent, so brutal that you did not want the people to know that you could stoop to such levels. And I'm talking about this in respect to what we were just talking about. All right. Now, 64 years, from 1555 to 1619, I believe it was, 1619. And then they told you from that point on, that's when they say the first slaves were brought in here. But those are lies. I ask everybody that I'm talking to, go to the Library of Congress. They have all the historical, all the records, okay? And read the stuff up. Read up on all of this. And so right there, if they're telling you in the history books, 1619, but in their congressional archives, they're telling you 1555, they're hiding something from you. They're not teaching you the truth. And if they won't teach you the truth, why would you trust them? And what was so important about this 64-year history? In this, what they call in terms of the dehumanization process, this is when they said that they were going to try to make these people to be on the level of the beast of the field. kill the babies, all of this stuff, beat the women, rape the men, kill the men, all of that stuff, so that when the babies were born, the babies would be born with this fear of the slave master. All right. Now, when we fast forward it to today, because remember, this did not take place for 64 years. This took place for almost 400 years. And what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to give you an oversight of what's going on globally. So now we see the inner cities erupting in violence, right? We see displays of savagery, right, across the inner city. We see the educational system collapsing in the inner city. We see there's a growing disrespect for life, women, and everything. Whose fault is it? American leaders and Western leaders act as if they have Alzheimer's. And what I mean by that is that they can go and cause hell and wreak havoc everywhere. And because the havoc doesn't come back on them right then and there, they think that they've escaped the ramifications of the laws of nature. And when it comes back on them, they disavow any knowledge or any hand in the creation of the madness that is now engulfing them. Look at what is going on in Ukraine, how America does not respect the lives of the Ukrainians and are using them as cannon fodder. And now they're putting it in the minds of the masses. We have no idea why Russia attacked. Right? Alzheimer's. Right? Those were, every time you come around an Alzheimer's patient, act like this is the first time they saw you or the first time they spoke to you. They're surprised. Same thing with the Western leaders. When they implement these policies, and then they continually push these policies, and then the blowback happens 20, 60, 80, or 100 years later. Without recognition of the cause, there can be no solution or cure. You understand? And this is a pattern of Western leaders. Like we look at New Caledonia. France is there, right? And France is suppressing New Caledonia. Okay, here's the kicker. If you go to my channel member stream, I did a 5-part, I think it was over a year ago, 5 parts. And I was talking about these very issues. And in there, guess what I addressed? New Caledonia. And what France was doing over there. And how the people will not just sit there and take that. Channel members, you go back and look at the 5-part series and tell me if I'm lying. Talked about the very essence, what we are now hearing in the media today. I was talking about that in that 5-part series. And now it's news now. But when I was talking about it, they made it a sidebar. About how France, think about this. I want the French to think about this, the people. Because look at this. The government is a representation of you, right? You may be against the government policies, but if you don't stop the government from implementing the policies, the blowback will be on you too. Okay? Same with America, same with any nation. So how can New Caledonia be a French territory when it is not in Europe? France claims to be a European nation. Why and how? Do you know that the French are occupying an island off the coast of Africa? It is a African island that is, I forget which nation it's a part of in Africa, but it's an island there. And do you know the French refuses to recognize that it is an African island, an African nation? You know that? Google this, go look it up. They say that this is a European nation. This is what I'm saying. This arrogance. It has a lot to do with racism. It has a lot to do with colonialism. It has a lot to do with exceptionalism, but it has more to do with imperialism. How in the hell can you claim to own an island off Africa, and yet you're screaming about the influx of migrants in Europe? The hypocrisy. Britain is screaming about the influx of migrants so much that they're trying to now deport migrants to Africa. And yet they don't talk about the British migrants in the Malvinas Islands, close to Argentina, the occupied territory of Argentina, a world away. We can go on Diego Garcia and all of these other nations, Guam, all of these island nations in the Pacific where they have displaced most of the population so that they can turn those islands into military bases. There's no screaming. And has anybody ever thought about this? The British occupied certain islands in the Pacific. I mean, in the Indian Ocean Pacific area, right? Do you know that there have been multiple mandates by the UN that's demanding the British resettle those people who were taken off that island and to turn that island back over, or those islands back over to the indigenous people? And you know, Britain has yet to respond or even acknowledge the UN mandates. Do you know that they've passed one against the United States also? And the United States flipped it away like it wasn't nothing. Well, we're talking about international law. So it works when they want it to work, and when it works against them, they ignore it or trample over it. Huh? My thing is to call attention to the hypocrisy of the West and any other nation. It doesn't have to be the West. Like when I get on Russia sometimes. Because when we look at this situation that is going on with Russia, with Ukraine, and with the West, there have been a few missteps by Russia. Like when Putin believed in this so-called Minsk agreement, the first and the second one. Like when Putin was getting daily briefings from his intelligence chiefs about the military buildup of the Ukrainian forces close to the Donbass. Remember, the war started, 2 years ago, right? But the overthrow took place when? 2014, right? So what was going on in between that time? And why would you stop the rebels of the Donbass from taking Kyiv when they had broken the stronghold of the Ukrainian military? And they were on their way west in Ukraine. And that's when the United States, France, Germany had this come to Jesus moment or come to Muhammad moment. Let's negotiate. They did not want to negotiate prior to or up until the rebels broke the Ukrainian armed forces. And when they saw that the rebels had broken the Ukrainian armed forces, and they saw that they were on their way to Kiev, and as a matter of fact, if you go do the work, do the search, you'll see commentary from the West saying that they could be in Kiev in a week. Then the U.S. and NATO leaders went and hoodwinked Putin to sign an agreement to call off the rebels from going west. That was crazy to me. That was absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. Because now we're looking at the ramifications of that policy right now. I call an ace and a spade a spade. Okay? The United States actually said this. Check this out. When they overthrew Yanukovych, right? They actually thought that the Russian armed forces would then enter the entirety of Ukraine and restore his legitimacy as the president and squash the rebellion that was instigated by the West. They thought that, but Russia didn't do it. Those were mistakes on Russia's part. And now Russia is dealing with the blowback of that, with the constant escalation by NATO nations and the constant threat of intervention by NATO forces. See, I call it like it is. Right down the middle. I'm going to tell you what it is. I can be wrong. We all are human. But common sense, we look at what we get all the information that we can, we process it, and then we come to a conclusion. Okay? And this is all I'm saying to you all. The West, most people don't understand, specifically the US and the UK. These are one and the same. I'll continue to say that. The US and the UK are one and the same. Do not believe anything other than that. All right? They have a vested interest in war. They have a vested interest in chaos around the world, because chaos and division breeds money for their war corporations. And those are the backbones of their economies. And without the constant war, things like Lockheed Martin and all of these, they would go out of business. They wouldn't have the profits that they have now. They need war. They need bloodshed. They need division and disillusionment. They need all of that so that the stockholders can get paid a handsome dividend at the cost of human life. If that is not a sign of a sadistic, blood-sucking, blood-shedding leadership, you tell me what is. You think about the profits that the weapons makers are making off the Ukraine war. We have some reports are stating between 500 and 600,000, not 500 or 600, not 5,000 or 6,000, not 50,000 or 60,000, but from military experts, from McGregor to Ritter to CIA analyst Larry Johnson, they are coming to the conclusion that there have been between 500 and 600,000 Ukrainians killed in war, with another 500 to 1 million wounded in this war. All because the United States and the UK and their lapdog NATO has this insatiable desire to dominate everywhere. They have this insatiable desire to rule everywhere. They don't care about the cost of life. If they did, then why supply the bombs? Notice this. Who's supplying the bombs in Ukraine? Huh? Now I ask you this. Who's supplying the bombs for the rebels in Syria and Iraq? I'm asking. Who is supplying the bombs in Ukraine? Who is supplying the bombs in Syria and Iraq? Who is supplying the bombs to Taiwan and Japan and South Korea? So you see the pattern? All while trumpeting international law, all while talking about territorial integrity and national sovereignty, and nations have a right to choose. They are independent nations, and all while telling the whole world that they want peace and stability. What is the greatest threat to peace and stability? Depriving people of their inherent rights, not under the government, but under God. That is a recipe for social explosion and disillusionment. That's a recipe for civil war and global war. And guess who continues to push that? The US, and guess who else? The UK. We're watching it in living color. Nobody can say I'm making this up, right? Who is the number one weapons seller, even though the weapons are proven to be just garbage? Who sells the most weapons in the world? The United States, right? Right? Now look at the conflicts across the globe. And look at the weapons being employed across the globe. Most of them are Western-made weapons. Is that by accident? No. Do you see what I'm saying? The hypocrisy of the nation. Let's look at something closer here. So we got to talk about this, because we're going down the rabbit hole of Western bizarro politics. Let's look at Haiti. Haiti is close to the point of social explosion. As a matter of fact, it is in that moment right now. right? We see civil strife and insurrection going on. Why? They would have you to believe that it is a bandit in Haiti that wants to rule, and then there's a faction over here that's, see, this is what they do, gang politics. It's a gang or a thug over here. It's a gang or a rebel over here. And so when you vilify people like that and you delegitimize them, guess what? In the eyes of the masses, if you decide to take military or economic action against them, you're justified in their eyes because they don't have all the tools necessary to analyze what you're bringing before them. So now, if we look at what's going on, who are those guys? Because remember, the United States has almost complete control over that region. That's a part of the Monroe Doctrine, right? Now, this is not because of that gang member right there or that factional leader or that warlord they want to tell you about. Guess what this is about? It's about the United States publicly kidnapping a sitting president who wanted to take the resources that they discovered in Haiti and put them to work for the Haitian people so that they can have universal health care, so that they can have job creation, so that they can invest in education, right? And be a sovereign and independent nation. The United States kidnapped this man, held him at gunpoint, and forced him to sign a decree that stated that he would never enter Haitian politics again. Jean Aristide. Go look it up. This wasn't done in the 1900s. They kidnapped a sitting president and forced him to submit to the U.S. goals because Haiti is the center for the U.S. drug trade, for the CIA's drug trade. This is where they take that cocaine they get from Colombia and ship it to the east. And this is where they take that opium they get from Afghanistan and that area and ship it to the west. And this is that black fund, that black money that they get, the CIA and all of these alphabet organizations use to fund their covert operations to destabilize nations and wage covert wars on nations behind the scenes. They need money because even though the government continues to fund them, they need more money. Haiti sits at the center, and Aristide wanted to remove Haiti from that position. And this was unacceptable to the U.S. And so they allowed weaker candidates to take over. And then they would not supply the candidates with what they needed. And now they're trying to put sprinkles on poop by fandangling and finessing the Kenyan president to send Kenyan troops over there. Now they'll be under U.S. command, and they'll receive all their weapons from the U.S. But they want you to believe that it's a Kenyan because Kenyans are black, and Haiti is black, so they want to cover it with a black face. This is the reality of what's going on over there. The U.S. does not want an independent, free, and sovereign Haiti because it would interrupt the drug trade, the weapons trade, right? And it would show that Haiti is a viable nation when it's not under occupation. And it would also give Haiti the necessary independence to then refuse to pay France the hundreds of billions of dollars that France won in a judgment against Haiti because the Haitians rebelled against French colonialism. Google everything that I'm saying. And it was a European court that sided with the European nation that said France lost too much in rum revenue and rubber revenue, and they must be compensated. Regardless of the life lost doing those deeds, they didn't care about that. They were talking about monetary gain. Regardless of the colonialism and the brutality of the French on the people in Haiti, The European court overlooked all of that. Why? Because that's their brother. And they know that if they had ruled in favor of Haiti, this would have set a precedent of all these other former colonial people wanting their just due also. So they sided with France and put a debt burden on Haiti that they know that the Haitians could never, ever repay. And this was because they wanted to secure some of the resources in Haiti and around Haiti. So if you're under debt and it's accruing interest and you have no way to pay it off, guess what you have to do? You have to auction off some of your assets, right? This is what they were doing to Haiti. This is what they're trying to do to Haiti. And they keep that out of the news when they're talking about the conflict, the strife, and the uprising across Haiti. See, without understanding this, it makes you look as though the Haitians can't govern themselves. How is that even rational thinking when Haitians come here and become council members and all of that stuff? You're telling me that they can govern themselves here, but they can't govern themselves in their own house. Make that make sense. And this is what they do in Latin America, in the Caribbeans, in Africa, in the Middle East, in Asia. And guess what they were doing? They're doing it in Europe too. Europe is not off limits. Look what's going on in Georgia. The European Union has, from what I've read, they are threatening the Georgian leader with assassination. What did they just try to do with the Slovak leader when they shot him? Now here's something about that leader from that country. I think it was the Slovakian leader, if I'm not mistaken. The Slovakian prime minister, I believe it was, that was shot at 6 times, and I believe 2 of the bullets pierced him or whatever. Now here's something. Let's go into something. According to just any government, when they have plans to do something, they don't just do it that day. They send out a team to scope and survey the entire scene, right? What are vulnerable spots? Where do people gather a lot? Where are escape routes? What is this, and this? And then they make up a plan according to that, right? And so when they make up a plan, they have the people in place that can interdict any threat of violence, right? Right? You have people in plain clothes. You have people in suits. You have police officers. You have them everywhere, right? Now I want to ask you this. How in the hell can a lone assassin, attempted assassin, manage to get that close to the leader of that nation and get off 6 rounds? 6. You have your national. You have like the you know how the president has the Secret Service, and then while the Secret Service is there, some of those other alphabet guys are there, right? So I'm pretty sure they have their counterparts in Slovakia, right? Or whatever nation it was. How could he get that close and get off 6 rounds without any shots being returned? I'm asking this. Without any shots being returned while he's pop, 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 pop. Does that even seem logical to you? Try that with anybody else and see how that works. See if you can get off 6 rounds with another world leader without shots being returned to you. So now, when we get that in our head and we see the threats that were made against him by the US, the UK, and other NATO members, when we see all of that, then we can look at what's going on with Georgia, with the Georgian. Matter of fact, let me see if I can pull that up real quick. All right? Let me see if I can pull this up real quick. Because the Georgian leader said that the EU or NATO threatened to assassinate him. Here it is. Man, I'm telling you, when I see something, it stays up in there. And it just takes me a minute to get to it, but I'm going to get to it. And first of all, I want to take the time out right now to thank everybody who's joining us on Locals, on Twitter, on Rumble, on Odyssey, on the Red Pill Journals, and our main show, the Red Pill Diaries. Thank you all. I should have said that at the beginning, but I wanted to really jump into the news and jump into all of this stuff because I haven't been with you guys. I've been on a forced vacation for a little bit since my last live, you know, and that's why the videos that came out came few and far in between, right? When that happens, I'm on a forced vacation. I'll leave it like that, okay? You know what I'm talking about. But let's go further. It says, Georgian PM, Prime Minister, accuses EU of blackmailing him with assassination threat. Now, this is what I want to make clear to you all. There is little to no distinction between the EU and the NATO alliance. The EU should be considered the political wing of that military or terrorist organization called NATO, because both of them serve their purpose for the United States and the UK and former colonial powers. All right. So when they talk about the EU, they're talking about NATO, because the same nations, almost all of the same nations that comprise the EU, guess what, are members of NATO. See, this is their sleight of hand. Again, sleight of hand. When America and the UK and former colonial powers are in hot water for lying, or they have executed illegal and unjust wars, and they want to execute more, but it's a lot of heat coming to them, right? Instead of them saying that they're going to deploy NATO forces there, guess what they'll do? They'll say Italy is deciding to deploy forces there. Then someone will come up and say Canada deems it necessary to deploy troops there. And then they'll say Germany has decided to deploy a contingent of troops X, Y, and Z. Then right after that, the UK has decided to do war games in the region and deploy X, Y, and Z there. What is the difference between that and NATO? See, that's that creep thing. This is the sleight of hand. When they don't want you to understand that it is NATO doing it, then they announce the individual countries of that NATO organization, that terrorist organization called NATO. And when they don't want you to understand that the EU and NATO are one and the same, what they'll do, they'll say EU, they'll say over here, they'll say NATO, when both of them work in concert for a plan of total domination. They don't care about the citizens of Europe. You know they don't care about you if they don't care about the citizens of the world. You are an afterthought to their policies. So listen to me good. Let's look at this real quick, because we talked about the Slovak leader. Let me give me a little more water, please. All right. And it says, Georgian Prime Minister accuses EU of blackmailing him with assassination threat. The bloc is trying to intimidate Georgia over its foreign agents law. Now, it's amazing because I did an article on Patreon, I believe, about a foreign agents law last year. And I was talking about the very nations that are condemning, because what nation was it last year with the foreign agents law? It was a Central Asian nation, I believe it was. And I pointed out that the very nations that are condemning that nation, which now can be used in this context, the very nations that are condemning Georgia of this law all have that law. You know that? The nations that are condemning Georgia for trying to institute a position where we know who is funding who, so there'll be no mistakes. Because of all of the outside money pouring in to buy politicians and stuff, we need to know where your funding is coming from, where more than 10 or 20% of your funding is coming from. Because if you're getting 10 or 20% of your funding or more on the outside, your loyalties are to them and not to your nation. So we need to know this, so we're going to implement this bill. Do you know the United States was the first nation to implement that bill? Decades ago. They've updated it and updated and updated, where this is why the United States labels RT as a Russian state owned organization. This is why they the CCTV. That's why the U.S. designated the CC, the Chinese television, as a state-sponsored, state-run organization because of that very law in the United States that they are condemning Georgia for instituting. Do you know Britain is doing the same thing? The very law. Do you know Canada has that law on the books? Do you know more European nations have that law on the book where we need to know where your funding is coming from? And they're condemning Georgia for wanting the same thing. See, Georgia was their pet project until Russia beat the brakes off of them in Georgia. Because Ukraine wasn't the first. They wanted to try their hand at Georgia. And the Israelis took part in this. They were advisors. They were, as a matter of fact, the Israelis were Saakashvili's advisors in his presidential palace during the war. You know that? I'm telling you this. I tell you, this is absolutely insane. This is what I'm telling you. This is bizarro politics by the West. So listen, it says this right here. Listen here. It says, Georgian Prime Minister Irakli, I can't even pronounce the second part of his name. I'm not going to butcher it. I'm not going to even try. I want to apologize to him and Georgians. So I won't insult you by trying to pronounce your last name, okay? It says, has claimed that a European commissioner told him he could end up suffering the same fate as Slovak's Prime Minister Robert Fico. Now, why would a European commissioner say that if the Europeans did not have a hand in what took place with the Slovak's leader? And we know that all of this is done under the auspices of the U.S. and the UK. Huh? The Georgian leader is saying as such that he's been threatened with assassination if he carries on and pushes this bill through. Why would America, why would the UK, and why would the EU be so concerned with this bill? Is it because they have a financial interest in the bill not passing? Is it that they have a lot of investment in these so-called politicians in Georgia that they want to keep their financial thumb on it so that they can push Georgia towards the EU and towards NATO and open up another front for Russia to deal with? Because according to the United States and according to the UK and according to the EU and according to NATO, Ukraine is a sovereign state, isn't it? And Ukraine has the right to choose its own path, right? That doesn't apply to Georgia. Huh? Isn't Georgia a sovereign state? Doesn't it have the right to implement policies domestically and foreign that is in the benefit to their people? Huh? And if that's the case, then why the uproar? Why is the uproar from the West? It is because they have been working to overthrow any leader that is sympathetic to Russia so that they can completely surround Russia and China, I might add, so that they can hold them hostage through the barrel of a nuclear gun and pretty much boganize them. That's what's going on. That's what's going on. Nobody really wants to discuss these things, but I will. Okay? So let's go a little further because I want to go back to New Caledonia, okay? Excuse me. And I advise those channel members to go back and look at the 5-part series for channel members. And we address some of this stuff about New Caledonia and a lot of this stuff that's happening now, okay? It's amazing how you talk about something a year or two ago and you break down stuff and it reads as radio instruction or Chinese instructions to an English speaker a year ago. But as the news drops, it becomes more clear and understandable for most people, you know, as more things are manifested. So listen to what he says right here. It says, in a Facebook post on Thursday, they got the president's last name, and I can't say the prime minister's last name, so I'm just going to say the Georgian prime minister. In a Facebook post on Thursday, the Georgian prime minister said that unnamed commissioner warned him during a recent phone call that the West, listen to this good, it didn't just say EU, it stated the West, which means the UK and who else? The US, right? Okay. The West would take a number of measures against him if his government pressed ahead with a law requiring foreign NGOs in Georgia to disclose their funding. Let's read that part again. In a Facebook post on Thursday, Georgian Prime Minister said that the unnamed commissioner warned him during a recent phone call that the West would take a number of measures against him if his government pressed ahead with a law requiring foreign NGOs in Georgia to disclose their funding. I thought Georgia was a sovereign territory. Didn't they say that when Russia was dealing with Georgia? That Georgia has a right to make up its own mind if it wants to be in the EU, if it wants to be a part of NATO, right? Georgia is a sovereign nation, and they don't have to bow to anybody. This is what the EU leaders and the NATO leaders were saying, right? Prior to Russia's shellacking of Western forces in Georgia. Weren't they saying that? And all of a sudden, when the Georgian leader stands up and says, I'm going to assert sovereignty over these matters, what's best for the Georgian people, death threats come from the very people who said that they embraced Georgia to join their democracies, right? And according to the West, their democracies are the rule of the majority, right? Leaders are voted in by the majority of the people to push and put in play the will of the people, right? So now Georgia is implementing that very statement. In the West, the democracies are threatening his life. Why? It says so right here. If his government pressed ahead with a law requiring NGOs in Georgia to disclose their funding. Now, the kicker, as I said, the United States already has this law on the books. Canada has this law on the books. The UK has this law on the books. And most NATO or EU members have that very law on their books, where they get, as a government, they have the right to look into all of the financial dealings of politicians and organizations, right? But they don't want that for little old Georgia. That's a luxury that cannot be afforded to little old Georgia. Only to the West, because we don't want you interfering in our elections. But it has the West up in arms because Georgia is saying, hey, listen, you may be a bigger power. You may be a more powerful and a more richer power. But if we're talking about democracy, this is what the masses of the people want, and I'm trying to implement this. And you get a threat by the people who said they embraced you and that they are beacons of democracy. How does that stand up in the eyes of the people? And with friends like that, who needs enemies, right? Right? That's crazy, right? I'm telling you, it's absolutely insane. Let me go to the chat real quick. Shout out to Perseverance Chameleon. Shout out to Joel Bradford. Shout out to Jagged Stars. Net Randall is in the building. Thank you guys for joining. Let's see. All right, let me put this up real quick. Joel Bradford says, I don't understand why these EU countries stay in the EU, even though they are treated like it. I have some kind of thought on that matter. And that is, when they become a part of the EU infiltrates all of the government organization and all of this. This is why the NGOs are an important part of the US, UK, and NATO strategy. Because the funding, what they do, they take these NGOs in there. They find out the poor parts of the country. They find out the disaffected part of the country and the disillusioned people in the country. And what they do, they claim to deliver aid to those people. And what they're doing is cultivating the dissatisfaction of those people and offering them their way as a better way. They're saying, listen, we're teaching you this, this, and this. Now, you're poor because of the policies of your government. They're not telling you that you're poor because of capitalism or because of Western domination and because of the Western nations being vampires or parasites. They're not telling you that. But they're telling you that the laws enacted by your government is the reason that you're in this position. So what they do, they grow these young, disaffected and dissatisfied people up. And they sit them back. And they feed their minds, they feed them physically, and they give them finances. And they say, you owe us. Now, later on, we may call on you for a color revolution or for protests, or for you to assassinate somebody, or for you to sabotage infrastructure, or for you to demand elections. And who knows, we might put money behind you to become the next leader, but you have to show us your allegiance. And then if you get in that position, direct your country towards the West. That's a pattern in all of. So this is why the West is so enraged by the Georgian leader having the gall and the tenacity to try to push this bill through, the same bill that the US, the UK, most European nations and Canada has, and Australia has. They're enraged and outraged that Georgia is trying to implement that same bill. Because with this bill implementation, Georgia gets a clear view of who is funding who and what, right? And then that can give them a little more time to deal with these politicians who want to lean west, or these politicians who want to sell their country down the line for a couple bribes. And that is unacceptable to the West. And so why don't these nations pull out of the EU? It's not as easy, because now they're tied up financially. They're tied up politically. When you give up your currency and allow someone else to print your currency, right? And you've accumulated a lot of debt, guess what happens? Unknowingly, you become the willful servant of the person or people who gave you the finances. And that's what's happening to a lot. They think that the grass is greener, so they come into this union and they realize that this union has nothing and it's nothing. And some of them want to pull out. They're afraid of the assassination. They're afraid of the chaos that the West will put into play, because you see what he's saying? He said the West is threatening his life. You don't think they're threatening other people's lives? What is the guy who was the finance minister or something like that in Greece at a time when Greece was about to go belly up, and the people wanted a change, and they said, listen, default on that debt, start reissuing the Greek currency, and start doing X, Y, and Z. And this party came to power. We're going to do all of that, and blah, 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 and we're going to do that. As soon as they get the power, guess what happened? None of it was done. They started implementing the most draconian laws. Why? Because they knew that they were beholden to a power outside of Greece, and a power that was not only politically savvy, but a power that had the financial and the military means to do you in. So they get caught in this, right? They get caught in this. The best thing would be to not let them know. This is what you would do. This is what I would do. My most trusted confidants, if I was the leader of one of the European countries, or any country that was in a financial union with one of the European countries, like those African nations that are pulling away from the French franc, that they imposed on the African nations, that France doesn't even use. The franc has been imposed on African nations, and France doesn't even use that currency. Make that make sense. But anyway, so this is what I would do. My most trusted confidants, I would put them in certain spots, and I would have them to implement certain things little by little. And I would have them to start putting that printing press up, right? And I would have them to put, and then I would make jokes about it. I'd say, you know what? I think we're going to transfer this printing press over to an African nation or over to an Asian nation, because our money is printed by the EU. And I said, but we have to do a few test runs because one of these nations want to buy it, and we want to print up some stuff just to see if it still works. And I'll print up enough currency that would offset our breaking the union with the euro and the European Union. And once that is in place, I will use my intelligence service to go shut down all NGOs. And I will put my military on the border with all of those nations that are in the EU. And when I've enacted that, then I would announce publicly that we have pulled out of the European Union and that we are no longer vassal states to the US and the UK and the Germany. We're no longer that. We have an independent policy, domestic and foreign, and we're going to do what's best for our people. And before I even did that, I would make like deals with Russia and China and other South Africa, because South Africa produces some good grades of weapons. In Iran and North Korea, I would import enough weapons, not to say that I'm the best military in this area. No, but to show them that any incursion into my territory or any threats of military force on us would incur such a huge loss that it would be unacceptable. So they would be pushed back. And if they wanted to then implement sanctions on me, then I would sign up for the Belt and Road. And I would enter the Eurasian Economic Union, the West Asian Economic Union, the BRICS Union, the AAIB or AIIB bank that is headed by China. I would do all of that. Because, and also I would enter into a trade union with Africa and with Latin America and the Caribbean. That would offset the sanctions of the West. And it would also, in the eyes of the people, show them that I am a leader worthy to be trusted, and also a leader that has their best interest at heart, even if it means attempted assassination on my life. That's how you pull out those unions. But you got to be smart about it. You can't get into a union with the devil and then say, hey, devil, I don't want to dance with you no more. The devil will get the pitchfork and stick in your chest. So you have to position things. So when you officially announce it, everything is in play. So that if they try to do something, you have the wherewithal to rebuff military aggression and economic coercion. Right? Seriously. That's how I would do it, Joel. So now I want to, let's see. Perseverance says, the EU are vassal states of the US. That's a project of the US, the European Union. You know, it's amazing about this. The US, the UK, and the EU nations left no stone unturned to prevent a United States of Africa, right? But they embraced the United States European Union concept. They overthrew leaders. They assassinated leaders, right? They balkanized and destroyed countries. Sudan is one. The Congo is two. Balkanizing them because those countries were huge. They're still huge countries, but those countries were mega countries, slightly smaller than the United States. The United States and Europe balkanized them so they can siphon off the resources and all of that stuff. So is Europe a vassal to the U.S.? Most of the time, yes. Yes. But the United States does not exert 100% sovereignty either. The UK has some say in it too. Don't let it be. Everybody says that the UK is the US lapdog. It is. But at the same time, don't believe that the UK gave up on its once conquered territories. Did the United States give up on its conquered territories? Huh? Doesn't the United States always leave something behind to try to ensure some type of influence there? The same with the UK. Let's see. A Perseverance Chameleon says this. Most vassal countries are under coercive control. Absolutely. Not just most vassal, all these countries. Listen to me good. You're talking about most vassal perseverance. China is not a vassal. China is the largest lender to America, the largest investor to America, the largest trade partner to America, and has the largest economy in the world when we use the metrics that are used by the IMF and the CIA, which is purchasing power parity. And the United States is trying to coerce China. Russia, the largest nation territorially in the world, which has the largest nuclear stockpile and right now has the most potent military force on the planet. The U.S. is trying to coerce Russia. So if it does that, the nations and powers that have the wherewithal to not only rebuff and beat back any aggression by the West, but can go on the offensive against the West, what do you think the United States is doing to those nations that are lesser in power and influence? They're trying to use coercion, threats, bribes, and eventually assassination and war. There's I got a book on one of my shelves. Well, I got a lot of books I read all the time. It is something that my mom says me and my brothers and sisters got from my pops. My mom reads, but she says not like my father. My father would sit, and I catch myself doing the same thing, and I did not know this. My father would lay at the foot of the bed, and he would have 4 or 5 or maybe even 6 books, and he would be reading from, and he'd be making notes. Right? God bless the dead. Rest in peace, pops. But so I find I do that. My brothers do that. My sisters read a lot. So I have this fascination with trying to read as much as I can and trying to understand. And I don't just read to say I read a book. Let me tell you what I'll do, and we're going to get back on this. I might pick up 5 books, and one day I might read out of all 5 and read multiple chapters. And then one day I might look, and I might open up one of the books, and I might be reading, and I might read a paragraph. And for a minute, I might stop, and I'll turn over on my back on the bed, and I'll look up to the ceiling, and I'll put my hand like this, and I'll be thinking over that one paragraph and one sentence in that paragraph, and I'll go over there, and that might stop me from reading the rest of the books that day because I'm trying to comprehend what is going on, not what we think is going on, but what is actually being conveyed to us. That's how I read. I read for understanding, and not just to say I read. That's what I do. Let's see. Perseverance says, Burkina Faso has another coup attempt together with the DRC. Oh, I was getting ready to get to this stuff. Man, I'm telling you, my chat is off the chain. My channel members, my list, my viewers, you guys are awesome. I'm telling you this. Burkina Faso had another coup attempt together with DRC. They found CIA operatives in the Democratic Republic of the Congo coup attempt. Matter of fact, Perseverance, I'm going to do you one better. I'm going to show you the clip. Okay? All right. So listen, where is, all right, here it is, right here. Is that it? I got a whole bunch of clips up here. Wishes to maintain West fights. Let's see, Caledonia is at the Middle East side. There are plans. Hold on one second. Don't tell me they erased it up here. I just downloaded that clip last night. Let's see. I want to see. Hold on one second, everybody. Let me see this clip real quick, and I'll cut it off in just a second. I don't know if this is the clip. Let me see.
Washington's trying to control the narrative around last week's assassination attempt on the Slovak prime minister by pushing the...
That's about the Slovak prime minister. I'll come back to that. Evidently, they must have deleted it. But I'll upload it again. I have it on my computer. I uploaded it to this. Sometimes my stuff does get deleted. I don't get bent out of shape about it anymore. But they caught the guys, some of the guys. They killed some of the people that were trying to perpetrate a coup and trying to overthrow the government in the Democratic Republic of Congo. See, the West split up the Congo into 2 nations, Congo and the Democratic Republic of Congo. That's what they did, into 2 nations. Now, common sense would tell me once I come to power, I would try to reunite the nations because they were more powerful together. That's just me. They caught some of the operatives in this thing, and it was Americans. And then the United States disavowed itself from this. Hold on 1 second. Let me see. Give me 1 second. Let me try something real quick. Since they deleted, check it out on my dashboard. Hold on 1 second. I'm trying here. Listen to this. This is an article. I just put this in the search engine and it just popped up. And I'll tell you what to put in. Let me go back a second. I just put in, I went to RT. I said RT Congo. RT News Congo. You put it in your search engine. So it says U.S. nationals involved in attempted coup in African state, according to the army. The leader of the group has been killed, according to the government of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. 3 U.S. citizens, 3, not 1, not 2, 3. U.S. citizens are among the 50 people who have been arrested for allegedly attempting to overthrow the government in the Democratic Republic of the Congo on Sunday, Reuters has reported, citing a spokesman for the Central African country's army. Now, it says Sylvain Ikinge, I think that's what his name is, issued a statement after reports of gunfire in the mineral-rich nation's capital, Kinshasa, in the early hours of Sunday. He announced on state broadcaster RTNC TV that the armed forces of the Democratic Republic of Congo had foiled a coup attempt against President Felix Tshisekedi in Kinshasa. Several suspects were detained, and the situation is now under control. Now, stop right there. What's going on in Georgia? The U.S. and the U.K. and the West are trying to cower the leader of Georgia. If he cowers, listen to me good, because this is connected. If he cowers and relents on this policy, he can never, ever be taken seriously by the West, because they weigh you, they try you. And once they found that you are wanting, from that point on, your words hold no sway with them. So if he relents on this bill, his position, his authority will be undermined in such a strategic way that he'll lose all relevance, and the West won't even look at him as a leader. I'm telling you this now. So we see the West doing it in Georgia. We see the West doing it in Kyrgyzstan. We see the West doing it in Ukraine. Trying to do it in Niger, Mali, Chad, Burkina Faso. Right? And now we see it in the Congo. We saw it happening in Sudan when the U.S. and Israel got mad that the military were going to keep to what Bashar says. You know, the former leader of Sudan. His name was Bashar too. He was deposed also. First, he was a military leader who deposed the leader, and then he became the leader, and then the military deposed him. Okay, now the military and the government of Sudan stated that they were going over negotiation for more favorable terms for Russia. Russia agreed to the terms, and the U.S. and the West speculated about a base that Russia may have or maybe about to build in Sudan, right? So once it was official and it was officially announced by the Sudanese, guess what happened? There was a division in the armed forces, right? And there's a civil war going on. And French troops, British troops, and other quote unquote European/NATO troops are on the ground leading the charge in Sudan. They've also been found and been apprehended in Chad and Mali and Burkina Faso. No news stations in the West pick these things up. Huh? So, what are the chances that these were just lone U.S. citizens who decided to vacation in the Democratic Republic of Congo and befriend people in the Democratic Republic of Congo just in a matter of a couple of weeks, and then the people that they befriended believed in them so much that they decided to go take over the government? Man, come on, stop this. This was a process, like I told you, what the West does with these NGOs. They use these non-government so-called operations. I'm saying operations right now because they are operations. They're covert operations to find the weakest links in those societies to enhance their disgust with that government and then to empower them against the governments so that the United States can have plausible deniability. You know, it brought me to mind of something that took place about 2 years ago in Iran. And I think one of the people have just been released last year or something like that. But Iran had apprehended about 3 to 5, if I'm not mistaken, 3 to 5 Westerners, U.S. people, Westerners, who were in the who had trespassed and violated Iran's borders and who were in Iran. When Iran apprehended them, the United States act like they didn't know why. This was a vicious act by this brutal dictatorship of Iran. This is ludicrous that these people were there spying. Right? They didn't go through the normal border checks. They didn't fly into Iran with their passports. None of that. They said that they were vacationing in a neighboring state and got lost in it in the mountains, but they were deep in Iranian territory, deep. And they said they had lost their way. The Iranians, when they apprehended them, found maps, circled things on the maps, meaning targets, money. Who goes hiking with money? I'm talking about big bills, stacks of bills. Weapons. And the United States said that these were tourists. Now, I wanted to ask you something. I think they came in through Iraq, if I'm not mistaken, Iraq. And tell me, at the time there was the ISIS and all that stuff going on, who goes on vacations in a war zone? Huh? Who vacations in a war zone? I'm asking these things. Tell me the same rational person that will willfully go in vacation in a war zone or where suspected so-called Islamic terrorists are beheading Christians. And in reality, those so-called Islamic terrorists were only beheading Muslims. I'm just asking. I may not be the sharpest knife in the drawer, but one thing is for sure. I am not the butter knife. Okay? That's real. So, again, think about that as I say this. So, we look at this. Hold on, I got some in the chat. Hold on. Somebody said something in the chat. Perseverance says this right here. A very efficient holiday. Like everybody in the United States said, you know what? Let me look on the map. Let me see where the wars are taking place. And I'm going to go and vacation right in the war zone. That's when the Belarus, you know, the Belarusians, they arrested people crossing the border and they were, we got lost and we were vacationing. So you're going to vacation on the border amidst heightened tensions and with the prospects of all-out war. You decide to take your vacation right there. But when the West puts this in the newspaper and on social media and in all their media organs, guess what happens? Everybody overlooks that. Nobody questions that. Nobody says, what the hell? Who in their right mind chooses a vacation spot in the middle of a war zone? Huh? You got Bali, all right? You got Bermuda. You got Turks and Caicos, right? You got the Virgin Islands, both British occupied and U.S. No, that's not good enough. I want some rest and relaxation. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to go on vacation right in the heart of Kurdistan, Iraq. Iraqi Kurdistan. While war is going on. Man, stop this. People have to start thinking. like they used to tell us, like my mom and people and the old elders used to tell us, use your head for something other than the hat rack. So use your head for something other than a hat rack. Do not buy into this madness that they continue to push on you, peddle on you. All right? So we're going to go into something real quick. We're going to go back to that New Caledonia. And I want to bring something to your mind. Okay? The colony there is majority black. I wanted to say that. So there has been a heavy-handed policy for at least 2 years by the French. I'm talking about open, like chaining people, and chaining them to the back of bikes or whatever the so-called French authorities have, and walking them through the city before putting them in jail because they're rebelling against French occupation and the exploitation of their resources. Guess what? After this clip here, I'm going to tell you what really interests France in there and why they really, really, really are trying their best to hold on to New Caledonia. And check this out. Now they're saying that Australia might send peacekeeping force. They may send soldiers to New Caledonia. Now, Australia has their own problems. The U.S. military base in Australia, the main one, is set up close to an indigenous so-called reservation. Why? Why was that done? Because the indigenous people of Australia, they have been rebelling and they've been protesting against their treatment and against them being written out of history and all of that stuff. And they're saying, return Australia to its rightful owners. Australia got nervous and allowed the U.S. to set up a base there so that the U.S., if things break out, the U.S. could quell the violence. And yet they want to go to New Caledonia to help France out. Man, stop this madness of colonialism and racism. Listen to this.
The Australian and New Zealand governments announced on Tuesday they were sending planes to evacuate their nationals from crisis-stricken New Caledonia. This comes as pro-independence protesters continue to push back against French forces by maintaining roadblocks on the archipelago. Paris sent over 1,000 security forces to reclaim the road from the airport to the capital of Noumea. A state of emergency was declared in the region after the death toll from clashes rose to 6. The unrest broke out over Paris's intentions to enforce a new law that would give tens of thousands of non-Indigenous residents voting rights. Protesters say they won't back down until the text of the law is withdrawn.
We won't give up until they withdraw the text they're about to vote on. No, we won't give up. Even if we have to die for it, we'll stay here on the roadblocks.
See the weapons, see. On the other side, they've got long-range rifles, and they are killing all our little sisters and brothers here in the neighborhood. The police is a militia, and then they'll say we're armed. That's it. Armed with this. That's the weapon. No gun.
All the talk about being out of breath and all that, we're not out of breath. We're waiting for this text to be withdrawn because it means the elimination of the Kanak people. We're already in the minority. If they get this text through Congress in Versailles, we're screwed. That's what they don't understand over there. We're already a minority at home.
So you see that? The people are fighting with slingshots. And France is saying that these people are brutal. The West, the way the West presents its the rebellion against colonialism is that the victims are the aggressor and the aggressors are the victims. And all the aggressors are trying to do, because we're victims, is trying to restore law and order. Whose law and whose order? You want to install and submit your law and the order of your rule. That's what you're trying to do. And the people they've had enough of this. So one of the reasons why France is so adamant about New Caledonia is because they have a huge deposit of nickel. Huge deposit of nickel ore. Right? They also have some other commodities that can be extracted and used in the West that they extract for pennies, if pennies at all, on the dollar. So this is the main reason. Listen, when you look at France and you look at U.S. and you look at all of these other colonial nations, it's a power thing. Power. And it's also, if I can steal your resources, I can live the way I want to live. I can live how I want to live. Forget how you're living in poverty and all of the reasons. Didn't France do the exact thing to Burkina Faso? Where it was only 5% or 10% of the population of Burkina Faso had electricity? France was not paying taxes on the gold and all of the ore minerals that they were stealing and all of the uranium. France was taking it back to France, empowering 25 to 35% of France with it, and then exporting the rest of the power to other European nations while Burkina Faso was living in the dark. How is that just? All of these nations talk about justice, talk about human rights. Is that not a right of a human to own the very core and commodities under his land and in his soil and in his water? Isn't that what nations go to war for? Didn't America say that she would go to war to protect her sovereignty and her interests? Didn't the UK do that? Why is this the sole prerogative of the West? Especially when it is the West that is robbing and pillaging everybody else. The hypocrisy of the West is almost unfathomable because it has hit such a level that if people start explaining to you the hypocrisy and how it's in everyday life, that is unbelievable. You would say, no, it can't be that bad. And we're looking at it in real time. Again, France is occupying New Caledonia, a French overseas territory. Now, I want to ask the people who recognize that as a French overseas territory. Did the French put it overseas? And if the French didn't put that area overseas, then how is that their territory? I'm asking. And who gave them the right to say that it was a French overseas territory? It was done through war and conquering through the barrel of a gun. The same as what America did to Hawaii. The same as what America did to the Philippines. There's no difference. Man, let's read a little bit of this article that I just pulled up, okay? On French Caledonia. All right. So give me a second. Let me read this. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I see. I'm going to come back to your comments in the chat in a second. France launches major operation to quash unrest in overseas territory. Now, if France really wanted to quash the unrest, what France could do is return some of the money from the resources that they extracted from there and give it to the people and give it to the inhabitants there to govern themselves. That is how you squash unrest. If you are not a natural element of that environment, if you want that natural environment to function as it should, you must extricate yourself from it. Because any unnatural thing in a natural environment will have to take over the natural and kill off the natural to survive, or both die, and vice versa. Vice versa. So if France was truly after peace and really wanted to quash the unrest, one would then say, hold on, what is causing the unrest? Oh, it's our presence. Oh, it's our thievery. Or it's our imposing our jurisdiction and our rules over those people. So let us go and talk to the people and say, hey, listen, we understand that we've done wrong. We understand that we've been stealing from you, we've been robbing from you, we've been ignoring your calls. But here's something. To try to make amends, not only are we going to apologize, but we are going to allocate money out of the French budget to pay reparations for our theft, and for our brutality and for our occupation of your land. That would quash most of the anger and unrest. And then for the little bit that's left, France would then announce, we are now removing all French authorities and French policemen and French military forces off this island so that you can rule yourself the way you see best. That quashes it. You don't have to, you're doing it wrong. You want to quash the unrest by adding fuel to the fire. I want to put out this fire here, so I'm gonna put some more gasoline and some wood on it. If I told any survivalists that, they would laugh me in my face. They would think I was insane. Anyone that is familiar with how to live in the woods, and we have a fire going, and I said, you know what? I know we're in the forest. I know this is not my land. I'm gonna put the fire out. And the guy said, hey, what are you doing with that 5-gallon jug of gas? Oh, I'm gonna put the fire out. I'm gonna quash the fire with this 5-gallon tank of gas. And I'm gonna throw, when I do it, before I do that, I'm gonna put all of these stacks of logs that I had behind the tree on top of the fire, and I'm gonna pour gas on it. So we'll put out, eventually the fire will go out. Yeah, it will, after causing mass devastation to that surrounding area. So if we look at that instance and then compare what France is doing in New Caledonia, they're doing the exact same thing. They are putting 5 gallons of gas plus an untold amount of wood on the fire, which is stoking the unrest. That's what's going on. Why is this so hard for people to talk about? And why is this so hard for people to understand? Let's see. Chris H. What's up? Chris H. is in the building. These Australians sound nuts. There are parts of those U.S. bases there that Australian soldiers are not even allowed to go into. Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you know a lot of the U.S. bases around the globe, the host countries can't go into certain sections of those bases? You know that? A lot of them, not just in Australia, a lot of them. That's why America, when she installs, after she bombs the nation and she installs her leader there, they go into this negotiating thing, which is not really a negotiation, it's a dictation. American troops and officials will have immunity from prosecution. This base right here, this land will be allocated for us to build an embassy. You know, the United States has the embassy the size of a small city in Iraq. You know that? They had an embassy the size of a small base, military base in Afghanistan. And the authorities can't even go on the base on their sovereign territory. All right? So that shows you when America signs these decrees and these agreements with these nations, those things are in the declaration. America has sovereignty over those bases on certain areas of those bases that you cannot go to. Period. Do you know that took place in Mali and Niger? That is one of the main reasons why the Nigerian authorities are throwing the U.S. out, because they didn't know what was going on the bases. The people were frustrated, saying that all kind of operations and stuff were being conducted at night, and this had to be told to them by the average Joe on the street, and say they were coming in with different people going across the border, not stopping at checkpoints, not showing IDs, coming back with all kind of things and all kind of people. And the Nigerians was like, hey, hold on. What the hell? We can't do that with you. Why are you violating the terms of our agreement? And we now must look into the terms, the deeper terms of the agreement. So when they start looking at the deeper terms of the agreement, the puppet leader who was installed there prior to his overthrow had given the United States pretty much what they wanted. So the Nigerians said, no, that is an affront to our sovereignty. We have to be able to come on those bases to make sure that there's no nuclear bombs up there. We have to be able to come up there to make sure that you're not torturing people, that you're not raping people, that you're not hosting equipment that we say violate our territorial integrity, like all these listening devices and all of that. And the U.S. came with threats. And you want me to believe that they're for peace? Stop it. Let's go a little further. It says, the authorities have vowed to reestablish order in New Caledonia, whatever the cost. You know what that means? We don't care how many people we kill. We don't care how many businesses we destroy. We don't care how many people we injure. We are going to establish our authority back on your territory over your people. That was a threat to the people of New Caledonia. That's what it was. And you will be held responsible for the deaths that take place because of your rebellion against our occupation. And I know how the Western leaders work. When they're pissed at you, when they're mad at you, guess what they do? They'll purposely bomb the little hospitals or the little clinics that you have. Oh, it was a mistake. They'll purposely bomb the areas that employ the most people, so that the people can be angry at the government for trying to free themselves from the colonial grasp of France. This is a tried and tested method of colonialism. They do this everywhere. There's a pattern, okay? It says this, and I'll go back to the chat in just a second. It says, France has launched a major operation in its Pacific territory. Is France in the Pacific? I'm asking anybody. Is France in the Pacific? I'm asking. Because I need to know this. Because now I'm going to act dumb for a minute. Is France in the Pacific? And if it's not in the Pacific, then why is there occupying Caledonia, which resides in the Pacific? Because if we look at the maps, the geography, right, we can see that France is a part of Europe, right? And being a part of Europe, it has no inherent right to anything in the Pacific, which lies some thousands of miles away from French territory, right? So if France is not a Pacific nation, then how in the hell can it claim Pacific territory and be justified in its actions of repressing and putting down a rebellion against colonialism? I'm asking. Let's go a little further. It says, France has launched a major operation in its Pacific territory of New Caledonia to reclaim a key road linking the region's main airport to its capital, Normandie. I might be butchering that. Amid widespread rioting. Now it's rioting. This is what I be telling you. This is what I'm telling you. This is the language of colonialism. This is the language of the oppressors. When you rise up, it's a riot. When they rise up, it's patriotic. How is this a riot under the definition? How is that? They are fighting, and remember what I told you about that law, the international law, where according to international law, any people or nation that is being occupied has an inherent right to armed resistance against the occupying force. That's international law. And then one say, well, that is a French territory. Then one has to ask, how did it become one? Did the people of New Caledonia just say, hey, we want to be a part of France? Let us join, let us go. Or did France go over there and colonize it and is still maintaining this colony there and is trying to maintain this colony through violence? Huh? And if they have, if New Caledonia was not a part of France in its founding, and it became part of France through its colonial expansion, then according to UN law, international law, those people who are from New Caledonia have the inherent right of armed resistance against the occupying power. Show me where I'm wrong in what I said. Show me. I'm not a lawyer, doctor, scientist. I can entertain them though. I'm not the professor. I can entertain them, though. I'm not a king, a magistrate, a president, or a prime minister, but I can entertain them, though. You can believe that. You're not going to pee off a roof and tell me it's raining. No, no. I demand more respect than that. You can believe that. So now let's look a little bit further. The archipelago located to the east of Australia. Hold up, stop. The archipelago located east of Australia, right? Is France close to Australia? According to the maps, it's not, right? It resides in Europe. Then how can they legally justify this as a French territory? According to law. And how can they justify putting down a genuine uprising against colonialism? You know how? By delegitimizing those who are rising up against colonialism. They're thugs. They're thugs, right? Savages, right? They're sparking unrest and they're rioting, not rebelling, rioting. The sparsing of words. The sparsing of words. That's how they do it. When they get mad at you, you're no longer a legitimate leader. You become a dictator, a tyrant, right? Not the president, not the prime minister, not the chancellor, a dictator. Through words and through their leadership, all of them are on the same note, and they use the media to delegitimize you through words, because when you look at what a tyrant or what a dictator is, in reality, it is a illegitimate leader who is willing to do anything for power. And we know that's America in the West. So if they put that tag on you, they put that brace on you, they're trying to delegitimize your struggle for independence, for sovereignty, to carve out your own pathway. That's what they're doing. So it says, the archipelago located to the east of Australia has been swept by unrest, sparked by election reform, pushed by Paris on its former colony. Hold on. If this is listen what this says now. Look. If this is a former colony, then why is France involved? Huh? If this is a former colony, then why is France trying to impose its policy on New Caledonia? Because that's what this says in this article. The archipelago, located to the east of Australia, has been swept by unrest, sparked by election reform, pushed by Paris on its former colony, listen to this, which lies some 17,000 kilometers from France. So you're trying to mold and make New Caledonia into what you want. You said they're no longer your colony, yet you control every government instrument. You control every instrument of power and every level of power. And when the people want to forge out their own pathway that is opposed to your colonial path, guess what you do? You say that they're rioting and causing unrest. So you are justifying the deployment of French troops and police to put down the so-called rioting. In reality, it's the people rebelling against constant colonial rule masked as a former colony. All right? That's what's going on. That's what's going on. How in the hell can this be French territory and it lies 17,000 kilometers away from France? When you answer that and you answer it sufficiently, then maybe I'll go over on the French side and say, you know what, you're right. But if you can't answer that, and if New Caledonia was not a part of France until colonialism, then the people in New Caledonia has the inherent right, according to international law, for armed resistance against the occupying force. Is that all right? All that I'm saying is backed up by facts. I put videos up, I read the articles, I read the definitions. I tell you these things right here so that nobody can say that I embellished anything or I use my own opinion on major issues. Let's see what Perseverance Chameleon says. He says, a country is only as secure as their best defense. Insufficient defense equals colonization. Absolutely. 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 So, and let me do something real quick while I'm on the phone, on the lines with you all doing the stream. Hold on one second. Because this is very important. All right. You know, France is roughly the size, a little bit smaller than the size of the state of Texas in the United States. A little bit smaller than the state of Texas in the United States. I think the state of Texas is 225 or 229,000 square miles. And I think France is like 205 or 210 thousand square miles. So it's a little bit smaller than the state of Texas. All right. Give or take 10,000 square miles, something like that. Now, with all of that real estate, they're concerned about New Caledonia, 17,000 kilometers away. New Caledonia is only 72 square miles. That is the size of New Jersey, the state of New Jersey. Now you have a state comparable to the size of Texas trying to rule a state comparable to the size of New Jersey. Why? There must be something there that you need to risk resources, manpower, and money. Nickel and that territorial waters around, you know that it is full of oil and gas and rare earths down there, and you don't want to give up that. Plus, it gives you a foothold in the Pacific. It's like an aircraft carrier. So you don't want to give up that because you look at those people as though they're your subjects. That can't go on in perpetuity. No. But this is bizarro politics of the West. Perseverance says they don't have the numbers to defend themselves. Listen to me. They may not have the number to defend themselves. But here's the thing. I often say this. Okay. when you look at rebellions, when you look at uprisings, there'll be a lot of casualties. And then you'll be like, why did they buck up against such a great power? Some people are willing. They're so tired of living under the thumb and the boot of others that can't relate to them. Some people are willing to sacrifice themselves so that the light can be shined on the injustices of their people. And then there'll be a new generation that comes up with this anger in their heart about the constant bombardment of colonial laws and colonial occupation. And if you don't allow an out, guess what happens? That pipe of colonialism will soon burst because the buildup of anger and resentment becomes so strong, especially when they look down on you in your own territory. The buildup will be great and the explosion will be astronomical. It will be unheard of. That's what we're looking at. We're looking at the prequel to the explosiveness that's going to take place in Asia. And when this war takes place with Asia, between the United States, mark my words, I say this often, between the United States and China, when China beats the brakes off of the United States, because they are going to beat the brakes off and they're going to roll over Australia like a parking lot. Watch what I tell you all. You don't have to believe me. Just watch when it takes place and tell me if I lie. I've never lied to you about anything before because everything you see, you can go and research it. So why would I start now? I'm telling you this right here. The people outside of they're yelling on the outside. I got to let this window down because they're yelling on the outside, but I'll do it in just a second, okay? But let me tell you, the people on the outside are looking and they're saying, hold up, look, we see France doing this in this African territory. We see France doing this in this other territory. We see the UK doing this in this African territory, this Latin American territory, this Asian territory. They're getting fed up with that because you can't justify having a colony 10,000, 20,000 miles away, right? You're concerned about what's going on in that colony while the people in your own land are starving. There's a great cultural divide. a wealth divide. And you're talking about something 17,000 miles or 17,000 kilometers away. This is bringing up not only anger on the islands that are being occupied, but it's bringing up anger in the nations that are doing the occupying, because the people are feeling that the government is not hearing them. They're not listening to the average people in their own home country. So now you're going to have to deal with an explosion in your occupied territories, and then there will be an explosion at home. And so listen to me good. So listen to me. I can't do nothing about that noise. This is the people out there. Hold on 1 second. Let me close this window. I don't know what's going on out there. I don't want to know what's going on. I want to know what's going on in here. So let's get it going. So again, you're dealing with a massive blowout that's coming, and it's going to break the imperial tentacles, break the imperial hands globally. I mean, everywhere. That's why you see the United States, Great Britain, or the UK, whatever you want to call it, and NATO hell bent on trying to win in Ukraine. What did one of the leaders say? What did Boris Johnson say? That if we lose, now, mind you, the UK has publicly said they're not a party to the war. The US says they're not a party to the war. The French says they're not a party to the war. And then Boris Johnson comes and doubles back and says, if we lose in Ukraine, this will mark the end of the rules-based order. If we lose, that means that they are a party to the war. So they see that their power, their influence, and everything that they've had during their colonial time is starting to wane, and it is causing them to get become erratic in their policies, causing them to want to wage war, even though they're talking about allies. They are starting to alienate allies and enemies alike. Chris says, I've never heard of Caledonia. Thanks for the info. Yeah, no problem. But channel members, go back and look. I have a 5-part series. I think it's a year ago. And in two of those episodes, I believe I addressed the French colonization of these nations in Africa and in Asia. And I specifically talk about what's going on right now. Okay. And I believe it's the 4th and the 5th episode, if I'm not mistaken. But it could be in another episode. I could be wrong on that though. That's the there's no justice, just us. See justice. Justice. Justice is the eventual working out of judgment. I believe so. I truly believe that. That justice, you cannot hope for justice to come from people who have been unjust. How can I receive full justice from a person who have exploited me, demonized me, and tried to destroy me? I can't look to justice from that. When you look to justice from the Creator, because this is what's going on around the world. The eventual working out of his way and his rule. He is removing those who have proven themselves to be unworthy of authority and leadership. That's why there's a war of worlds going on right now. The rules-based order is collapsing now because it has. Think about this. I want you to, everybody who's listening, I want you to think about this for a minute. Okay, let's just posture up for 1 sec. God, let's just posture. Let me see if that other window is open. Hold on 1 second. So let me see if I can close this window because they are really tripping. Hold on 1 second. All right. Oh, let me get this window right here. Oh man. That window is closed too. Now I can sit back down and I can go back to work. All right. I'm sorry, everybody. I can't control what's over on the other acre of land behind me. I can't control it. I think what is going on is they're doing some refurbishing, and so I can't do anything about that. Okay. I'm on my half acre. They're on theirs, and I can't do anything about that. So as I was saying to you, justice. The eventual working out of justice is from the divine creator. Let me proposition something to you all. America and the UK and NATO are fighting to maintain the rules-based order, right? And we see with every day that passes by, it becomes more unjust, more unfair, more belligerent, more greedy, more disrespectful, right? Now, this rules-based order has brought us 2 world wars, and we're on the brink of a 3rd one. The difference between the other 2 world wars and this one is thermonuclear weapons could be involved, right? Now, if we see the situation where there's a massive growth of poverty and disillusionment, shouldn't we welcome something different? So anything could be better than this, because this world or this rules-based order, right, has brought us to the threshold of thermonuclear extinction. And they want to continue this madness. I know, let me see, this towel that's in my chair. Check this out. They are so greedy for profit over the lives of people that they willfully and openly allow people to die when they could save them, but it may cost a couple more dollars. Who wants a system like that? Think about how greedy these people have become. Everything that God gave you as an inherent right to have, they charge you for it. Everything. They charge you for the soil, right? You got to buy your land. You got to buy the soil to plant, right? You have to pay for that. They charge you for water. You have to pay water bills. But water is the inherent right for everybody because there's no life without water. So why should I have to pay you for the very essentials of life? Right? They even charge you for air. You cannot even put air in your tire without paying. These people are parasites, and they live luxuriously off your misery. Who wants a system like that? Who is advocating maintaining a system like that? When we're seeing rape on a daily basis, murder on a daily basis, war on a daily basis, the disrespect for life, customs, and culture. Who wants an order like that? I don't. And if God, and when God wipes it away, God, you are the greatest. You know better than me. Look at this situation that we're in. No matter if you look in America or the UK or around the globe, look at the situation that this so-called rules-based order has now placed everybody in. Everywhere you turn, it's the war and the threat of war. Every time you turn around, it's a new disease. And nobody questions and say, where are these diseases coming from? And when you do your further examination, you see that it's been US and UK people in biolabs fiddling around with DNA and fiddling around with viruses, and they are enhancing the viruses so they can wage biological and chemical warfare. And some of this stuff gets loose and then morphs and metastasizes, and then it comes into contact with humans and animals and starts killing them. Who wants a world order like that? And matter of fact, who wants leadership in governments that espouse that type of stuff? And when you're not on board with it, they censor you. I know. For the last week, I was on an involuntary vacation. So I'm just letting you know. So, Chris says, you're talking about the green zone in Iraq, correct? They have one in the green zone, yes, and they're talking about they've acquired some more land in Iraqi Kurdistan. They're going to build a huge, they've already built a huge embassy, but they're going to build a huge, even bigger. They're going to add to it. I mean, why do you need all that? And one needs to ask the question: why is it all right for the West to do this and nobody else? Why? Chris says, France is in Europe or the fringe of Russia. Let's see. Yeah. France is in Europe. And yet it's claiming territories off Africa and in Asia. The UK is in Europe, and they love to say they're European nations, but they don't have no problems going and bombing someplace out of it. That's why I don't understand why they talk about there needs to be a new European security architecture. The hell you say? A new European that includes Russia. Stop right there. Stop right there. Bizarro world. That's what they're giving you. Why would there be a need for a new European security architecture when it is the European nations that are occupying nations around the world and waging war? Africa is not going up into Europe bombing, but different European nations are coming into Africa. Latin American nations are not doing that, but it is former colonial powers that refuses to give up their spoils in Latin America. For wherever it may be, in the Middle East, they scream about Islamic terrorism. This is what the West talks about. But what is more of a terror? You have military bases in the holiest cities in Islam. 20 miles from Mecca, 20 miles from Medina. You have a base close to Jerusalem. But you never allowed a Muslim to have a base close to the Vatican. So who is destabilizing the world? This is what I'm asking. See, when I come to you all, there's a passion in me, right? So you will hear it and I'll get amped up. But it is sincere and it's from the bottom of my heart. I have to ask these questions and sometimes answer them because nobody else does. Because these are inconvenient truths. And the only way to arrive at a solution of peace is to deal with the problems and the obstacles that are preventing peace. That's the only way. You don't get cures from disease without understanding the disease itself. Right? So how in the world can we get world peace when we're not understanding the very war makers, the very nations that are destabilizing the globe for financial means, for political ends, and just so that they can rule and have power? Huh? When we address those issues and we come to some type of understanding of who is the cause of these things, right? Then we can formulate some type of treatment plan to rid ourselves of all of these things which prevents peace. But without the examination and asking the questions, the hard-hit questions, you'll never arrive at a solution to that big problem that is plaguing the entire world. Peace. You can't have peace without justice. You can't have peace without freedom. You can't have peace without equality. For there to be peace, there must be a true freedom, justice, and equality applied across the board. Without that application, you cannot even fathom true peace coming in. Because even if you subjugate somebody to something, after a while, their anger festers. And then you have explosive points across the globe as the anger festers. Look what we're looking at all around the world. And yet America's talking about she's for peace and stability with over 1,000 military bases. Like I tell you all, I remember, and I got it on one of my drives on one of my computers. There was a congressional meeting, and some generals were being questioned by Congress. This was years ago. And they let the cap slip out the bag. They asked about the military bases, the training bases, the so-called storage and logistical supply areas around the globe. And they came up to over 5,000. 5,000. So some people say we have between 700 and 1,000 bases. But when you add up all of that, according to Congress, there was over 5,000 that are not recognized as military bases, but in actuality, they are used for military means. How can you get peace like that? How can you get peace selling a destroyer? Just look at the word destroyer. selling a destroyer off the coast of somebody that you got a disagreement with. That's provocative, right? If you and I had an argument and I drove across in your neighborhood and I got out of the car and I walked on the sidewalk past your house back and forth and I pulled out a big gun, that would be cause for what? For the police to intervene, because it would mean that I would be belligerent and a threat to the people in the neighborhood and the person in that house, right? Why isn't that communicated in the way that also aptly explains when America in the West sells destroyers off the coast of other nations, or fly warplanes off the airspace of other nations, or deploy troops close to other nations' borders? When it is an outrage if you dare do it to the United States or NATO nations. Why do they have the sole prerogative to be able to do that? Huh? It is because they believe that they're better than everybody else. They believe that everybody else is underneath them. That is the only rational explanation for them to continue to do that. Right? Thank you, baby. Jagged Stars, thank you. What else? Let's see. Allow me to do this. Hold on, everybody. Click this off. It won't allow me to do this. Hold on. Are you going to allow me to put more comments up? I'm trying to hide the comment. I'm trying to put another comment up. I can't do it. If you listen close, you can hear me clicking in the background. Trying to click this off. All right, there we are. These NATO nations messing around with prophecy. Russia is Gog and Magog. Russia and America are Gog and Magog. They will never defeat Russia if you're looking at it biblically or not. No, they won't beat Russia. The last war that America will have as an international power will be against Russia, straight up. And I'm not talking about 20 years down the line. I'm telling you this right now. In the next year, in this time span, from here to the end of next year or something like that, they will go at. This is how it's going to go. Listen to me. This is how it's going to go. America is going to fight Iran. They're going to attack Persia. And Iran is going to give America and her allies everything that they can handle and then some. And America and the UK will be forced out of the Middle East and North Africa. You see all of the stuff that's happening right now where they're being forced out right now. I've been telling you guys that for years. But I know it looked crazy when I was saying it, but now it's happening. And America will limp out of the Middle East, and she's going to then try to fight China, and China is going to beat the brakes off of America. Listen to me good. China has been preparing for this for a long time. They are going to beat the brakes off America, and America will be pushed out in Asia. And she'll make her last stand in Europe as a so-called international power. And that's when Russia will beat the brakes off the United States head up. It's not going to be a proxy when it breaks out like this. Like what we're seeing. This is just what we're seeing in Ukraine and Kyrgyzstan and Georgia. That's the prequel to what's going to happen. And what Russia is going to do is start gobbling up former Soviet states. All these people who were trying to help balkanize Russia. And America is going to get beat. And she's going to get beat, and she's going to launch a nuclear strike on Russia. Now, listen, you don't have to believe what I'm saying. Just check my track record. That's all I'm asking. Check my track record on this. And when they go to war, Russia is going to beat America and beat America bad on the battlefield in Europe. And America is going to ignite a nuclear exchange between those two in Europe. That's where the nuclear war will be. It will be in Europe. It won't be anywhere else. It's going to be in Europe because that's where America will make her final stand as a global power. And when it's over, she'll be forced to come back to the United States. And when she comes back to the United States, those South and Central American nations are going to come. They're going to send people up through that border, and they're going to exact revenge on America for her interfering in all of their domestic policies for decades. They're going to spank America because she'll be a shell of herself. This is not something I'm bragging about. This is something I'm just telling you about. All I ask you, check my record on when I tell you these things. All right. I was the one, remember, before the situation took place with Iran and Syria. I mean, in Israel. I have been telling you long. My sources were telling me that it was something big was about to take place right over there. What happened? What happened? And while we're talking on it, let me transition to that real quick, because I know I want to talk about that real quick before we end the show. I didn't know it was on for 2 hours, 36 minutes. So listen, someone asked me in an email about the situation with Iran and what do I think happened. I went into it a little bit in a premium 3-part series. Matter of fact, for the channel members and the patrons, the entire I released part 1 and part 2, but the entirety of the video, which is way more than what I released. All right, it's almost 2 hours. It'll be released sometime either today or tomorrow if my son gets a chance to it. Okay, the entirety of it. So listen, it's amazing where the Iranian helicopter crashed at, because it was in the Iranian province of Azerbaijan, which borders the nation Azerbaijan, right? And in that area, if you go to, I want somebody to do a quick search to see if I'm lying. Just Google something like Iran warns Azerbaijan on ties with Israel. Just Google something like that, because Azerbaijan was allowing Israel to set up training camps for Kurds, and also was allowing Israeli intelligence, into Azerbaijan so that they can slip across Iranian borders and slip back into Azerbaijan, back and forth, stuff like that. And Iran warned against that. As a matter of fact, Iran, at one point, Iran had deployed troops, and they were close to going into Azerbaijan. All right. Most people don't talk about this because a lot of people don't know. And so my thoughts on this is that I have had two people whisper in my ear and tell me that this was, they believe, a U.S. Israeli assassination of Raisi, the Iranian president. I haven't spoken much about it publicly, but that's what was told to me. That this was, and it said Iran is weighing its option. Have you noticed that when the helicopter went down, have you noticed that Iran had sent someone to Russia and to China, and then the Chinese and the Russians were speaking about that they will stop at nothing to aid Iran in this matter. And so now Russia and China are sending people to examine the crash scene and all of that stuff. Notice that? This was from what was told to me, and they said that they could not say this with a certainty, but they are 80-90% there that this was a reprisal from Iran embarrassing Israel and the United States with its massive drone and missile strike. And I believe it. It makes sense. And it said that Iran is now weighing options, and say Iran somewhat knew what was going on, and they were trying to placate their own people until they gathered enough evidence or enough information on the situation that takes place. Now, I'm not telling you that this is what that I'm saying. I'm telling you what was told to me. A question was asked, so I'm giving you the answer to what was told to me, and saying that Iran is weighing its options and is talking to Russia and China. Some people in the Iranian hierarchy want a direct response, a massive direct response to what took place. Some are not convinced that it was fully Iran. So, I mean, it's real, but Israel has been assassinating a lot of people. So how can you not put this on Israel and the United States? And remember this, the helicopter that Raisi took was a U.S. helicopter. It was a U.S. helicopter. It wasn't his presidential helicopter. And questions could be asked. If all 3 helicopters took off, right, and all 3 helicopters were checked, right, and all 3 helicopters were in a in a certain line, like 1, 2, 3, right? Why did one drop out the sky? And why did the other 2 make it home? Why didn't the other 2 circle around? And why was it the helicopter that went down that had, listen to this, it had the head of the province, the Azerbaijani province of Iran in there. It had a high RGC commander in there. It had the Iranian foreign minister in there. It had the Iranian president, and it had the head of the call of prayer in there. So they got a 5 for, a 6 for with one strike. If this is the case. And this is why the United States, if you go read some articles around the date that this happened, like a day or so later, go read the articles on Sputnik and on RT and a couple of other publications. And they were saying that the United States got in contact with Iran and other players because they thought that Iran this would be the thing that ignited World War III, that Iran would immediately respond to Israel. You understand? Why? Why would they even say that? And then after they said that, the following day they said, well, we believe that because we thought that Iran would use this moment to blame the United States and Israel to justify a conflict. Now, let us rewind the tape for a minute. If Iran wanted to justify a conflict, they had all of the justification with the act of war against its consulate in Syria. Right? Right? They had all of the, whatever they needed. They had the sympathy of the world. They had international law on their side. So if they wanted a conflict, that was the golden tool, the golden ticket. So why would you think that Iran wanted a conflict after the death of those leaders? It's because you had a hand in it. That's why. That's it. I mean, common sense. Let's see. Joel says that they're making billions while reducing the population. Talk about killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Boom, mic drop moment. Boom, mic drop moment, Joel. Let's see. I hear my cat up in here. Let's see. Let's see. I see my daughter puts up something. My nephew, my son puts up something. Mom, your baby boy loves you in the chat. So my mom is looking. They put something up in the chat. Mom, your baby boy loves you. Let's see. Chris says, your prediction makes sense. Uncle Sam doesn't want to let Ukraine go, but why do you feel that the EU would be the last stand for America? Because that would be her last major post internationally. She has a major standing in North Africa and the Middle East. When it breaks out there, she'll lose her position. Her other major standing is in Asia. You know, she says she doesn't want China to become the dominant power or usurp America. Well, that's going to happen. So what else? We can't say that she's, we know that she dominates the spheres of Latin America, right? But really, they don't really have the military wherewithal in Latin America to rebuff U.S. intransigence, right? So where does America has a huge amount of military, and why does she keep pumping in tanks and radars and missiles and warplanes every day to the continent of Europe? It's because she understands that something is going to take place. And what she's trying to do is prepare for that eventuality. And she knows that China has no interest in going to war in Europe. Africa has no interest in going to war in Europe. Latin America has no interest in going to war in Europe. The Middle East has no interest in going to war in Europe. So when we look at the situation and we fall back, we see that America has been the antagonist of everything anti-Russian in Europe. And she continues to try to take Russia's sphere of influence and continue to try to change former Russian allies into enemies. Sooner or later, if you do that enough, guess what happens? You meet face to face with the person that you're trying to upend. And when you don't listen to that person, what's the only outcome? I continue to tell you, listen, if you and I are talking and you are belligerent with me, and I'm continuing trying to say, listen, man, I don't want any problems. I'm just telling you, you have to stop doing this, 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 and this. But I don't want any problems. But you're not listening. You're telling me what you're going to do to me. You're telling me what you'll do to my family. And you're showing me by the actions of how you're arming yourself and putting stuff in the house across the street from me for individual conflict. Guess what happens? If you're not listening to my rational talk to you, and I'm not making any gains talking to you, and it's looking as though you're not recognizing anything I'm saying, it's just like I'm speaking a foreign language to you, right? So for me to get you to understand what I'm saying, guess what I have to do? I have to learn your language. What's your language, America? Violence and war. So guess what? You have made NATO expand all the way up to my border. There's nowhere else to go. I can't pick up Russia and move it back. So now either you'll have to move back or I'm going to move you back. Boom, you have it. Okay. Simple as that. Perseverance says that was my initial thoughts. Well, I gave you guys answers. It says, apparently the global weather map had a day removed from the time helicopter crashed. I didn't know that. But I do know that they said that there was someone around the copter before the Iranian delegation exited. And then when they looked for that guy, he was nowhere to be found. I don't know what it is. They say some person said it was an Indian guy. Some person said it was someone else. I don't know. I'm just repeating what they said about that incident. So you know what? That's a good point right there. Maybe cloud seeding. That could have been the point. I didn't even think about that. Thinking outside the box. You know. Let's see. My baby says this right here. I love you too, baby. Let's see. Chris says when U.S. makes its last stand in the EU, at that point, China might just join them. Now, this is going to be a knockout blow for Russia. Russia's going to get them. China will have done his part by weakening America to the point where when Russia get on them, it's going to be something else. And America is going to have to respond because she has all these treaties, right? You see how those former Soviet nations like Latvia and Estonia keeps antagonizing Russia and keep violating the agreements that they signed prior to those nations becoming NATO members? That's going to keep on building. They're even trying to cut off Russia's land access to Kaliningrad. Don't you know that's a declaration of war? According to the papers that's a declaration of war. So America has these treaties, and where they're bound, they are treaty bound to come to the aid. And guess what? When it happens, think about this. Iran is going to give her. Just look at this for a minute. Look at what's happening in Ukraine. How Russia is already unarming or dearming, demilitarizing the whole of the Western world. Now, when she gets into that war with Iran, she's going to have to use a whole bunch, right? That's more of her stockpiles. And then when she gets over there with China, guess what? China is nothing to play with. China has a shipbuilding capacity that is over 200 times the size of not just the United States, but an entire NATO. How are you going to win that war? So when that war takes place, guess what happens? Things get real crucial for you. And when you limp out of Asia, you're not that power that you were before you walked in Asia. And so you have to make a stand in Europe to defend your what? Your European NATO allies, right? Right? And so we see how they're antagonizing, those same NATO allies are antagonizing Russia. So that's where Gog and Magog are going to go at each other. In the Bible and in the Holy Quran, it speaks about, it says, God, I want you to understand something. Here's something very important. All right? Because people say that Reagan and other people brought down the Soviet, the Iron Curtain and all of this stuff. That's not it. Both Bible and Holy Quran talks about this. And it talks about Gog and Magog. And it says, God removed that curtain. You know what a curtain is? That Iron Curtain, right? God removed that. See, there were boundaries before the removal of that curtain. America knew not to overstep here. Russia knew not to overstep there, right? But God removed that curtain, and the Holy Quran goes further and says, and Gog and Magog sally forth and reduced the earth to a veritable hell. Look at what's going on. When it says move that veil, right? What is a veil? A veil is a curtain. What veil was removed in recent memory that we can refer to as a curtain? The Iron Curtain, right? Right? And so they're positioning to look what's going on in Africa. America is saying that China and Russia is wishing to supplant us there, right? America is trying to present her case as though she's benign and benevolent, right? And that Russia and China are the colonialists. So there's bumping heads right there. Same thing's going on in Latin America. Look what America and Russia are doing, positioning themselves in West Asia, in the Middle East. Look at what's going on in Asia. And now look at what's going on in Europe. Do you understand? So when that final war takes place in America, she'll be weakened by the previous wars. So when she takes on Russia, and Russia has exactly what she has, but better, how are you going to win against that? Especially against battle-hardened troops. So her only out would be what? Nuclear exchange. I've been telling you guys that for years, for at least a year and a half on here. Guess who's saying that now? What's his name? Who used to be Colin Powell's chief of staff? Larry Wilkerson. He said he fears that America would use, not Russia, but America would use nuclear weapons because of the position she now finds herself in. Who also says that? Who is thinking that? Colonel McGregor is saying that now, right? I didn't say that when it was fashionable, when they're starting to say it now. I was saying it last year and year before last. They're just coming to the reality that America is desperate. I've been knowing that for a while. So what we're looking at is the complete collapse and fall of the Western world. Because remember, if America falls, the power of the UK falls. The power of the European Union, as a matter of fact, the European Union dissolves and falls because that's an American project. The collapse, that means the collapse of the pound, the collapse of the dollar, the collapse of the euro, which means that the Western world could not project power outside of their borders anymore because they won't have the finances or the resources to do so. Europe has little to no commodities or resources. So how can they muster up military force when they have no resources? Because remember what Russia and China and Iran and the BRICS are trying to do? They're trying to change the system to a resource-based system where your money's value is predicated on the resources, right? So if the dollar collapses and America's military is beaten, what happens to Europe and the UK when the pound is tied to the dollar? The euro is tied to the dollar. UK's empire is tied to the American empire. And the expansion of NATO or the EU is tied to American hegemony. When all of that collapses, what happens? Europe will be stuck within its own borders, dealing with the aftermath of the nuclear exchanges. America will limp home and have to deal with the reality of no jobs and isolation. And nations remembering what she did and how she acted when she was on top. Don't think that that's just for somebody else or some. America is not, even though she claims to be the exceptional nation, She's not an exception to the rules of the universe. I continue to tell you that. There's no way that she can outstrip God. No way. No flipping way on God's green earth. She's going to outstrip God. So what he has ordained is already manifesting itself. Just get your popcorns. Sit back, relax, do your best to be righteous, treat others as you would have them treat you. All right? Put God first in everything. Put God first, second, and third in everything. Live your life with humility and love. You'll be all right. You'll be all right. Because this is the end of the rules-based order. We're watching it unfold right now. And thank you for joining me. I've just taken you down the rabbit hole of Western Bizarro politics, part 1. We're going to have another show tomorrow. If it's God's will, may God bless each and every one of you. I love each and every one of you from the bottom of my heart to the tip of my soul. I love you. But know that the love that I have for you will pale in comparison to the love that my God has for you. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true. But above all things, stay righteous. Hey, mama, your baby boy loves you more than life. Deuces, everybody. Thank you for joining me. We're out of here.